Right, well, welcome, Catherine, to the SOOT podcast. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself and giving an overview of your OT career?
Yeah, hi, I'm Catherine and I'm currently CEO at Cup of Tea Wellness and Therapy Services. I graduated from the MSc in Occupational Therapy at the UEA in 2014, and prior to that had done a degree in psychology. I went straight into working in youth mental health before moving into early intervention psychosis teams and then working in the research department on psychosis and youth studies. I went into perinatal mental health, and during my time during the research department, I set up Cup of Tea Wellness and Therapy Services part-time while working in the NHS. And kind of juggled the two of them. And in 2021, while in the perinatal team, Cup of Tea became full-time. So I left the NHS in 2021, and for the last 4 years, I've been running Cup of Tea full-time. So we're 6 years old now as an organisation.
Amazing. So that's now your full-time job, being the CEO of Cup of Tea. So you're a non-profit mental health service. So are you able to talk a bit about what the service provides?
Yes. So we worked, when we set up in 2017, the idea was to work with young people who either were not getting an NHS service, so kind of on those waiting lists, or just didn't meet the thresholds for the level of service that the NHS would provide, or had been through NHS services and it hadn't quite hit what they needed. And that can be for various reasons. It might just be that the OT offering isn't there, or that they need a slightly different approach that the NHS isn't able to kind of provide within kind of constraints of their funding and staffing as well. So it was to kind of capture young people who are falling through the net. We particularly get a lot of young people who are neurodivergent, who, if you sat down in a room, a clinic room, some of our NHS clinic rooms they need a bit of updating. And if you sat them down in one of those rooms and said, here's a worksheet, keep a diary, tell me how you feel, it wouldn't fit their way at all. And it came from a slight frustration of services saying the young person isn't engaging with us. And actually, for me, it was the service isn't engaging with the young person, and it needed to change how the service was being offered so that we can work with as many people as possible. So we kind of set up to fill that gap, and it's evolved a lot over time, especially with the pandemic. So we've evolved from, as I say, it was myself and I had 2 directors at the beginning. We decided to buy a van because in Norfolk it's very rural. The young people said it was really hard getting to Norwich or Great Yarmouth for appointments, so they wanted something to come to them. But having mental health therapy in the home sometimes isn't ideal either. There are parents listening, prowling around. It doesn't, it's their safe space, so actually opening up in that space then makes that feel a little bit unsafe for them. So the van was the solution, and the young people and families kind of helped design it with us to look to see what that would be like, and that was our starting point.
And you've expanded so much from then, haven't you? You've got now a piece of woodland that you rent and you do workshops there.
Yeah, that came out of COVID. So by 2018, we'd bought the van. 2019, we'd converted the van into our therapy space. We had a summer of going to festivals, doing appointments, and then the pandemic hit, and the van was too small to be able to socially distance in, to be able to continue doing therapy appointments inside it. So with the families, we kind of went, we're still able to hold appointments because of being a mental health service, but we can't do it in this space. And I'm a very outdoorsy person anyway, and had wanted to kind of start integrating nature into my practice a bit more. So the families were very happy to use the therapy van as our base, and then we would walk and use local parks and spaces to kind of have the therapy outdoors so we could socially distance. And after that, the families were saying, actually, we want more of this, and this really fits the way for that young person that they've accessed therapy for and it hasn't really worked. And actually, this has been really kind of a really positive experience for them, and they wanted more. The difficulty we had with accessing public spaces was that if you're working with the young people and there's things like attachment difficulties, or you're working on a project with them and using an activity like den building, for example, as the focus of your therapy session, you come back the next week, it might have been trashed or destroyed, or built on and expanded, and that can be quite hard in that therapy process to go, oh, okay, let's recalibrate and let's manage that. And that led us to do a crowdfunder to find our own woodland space. So we had lots of up and downs with that, lots of different difficult things with planning permission and finding the right space, but we've now got a really, really beautiful woodland home just outside of Wymondham. So we've been there a little while. We've now got a therapy cabin that arrived 2 weeks ago that we can hold one-to-one appointments in, and we have our shelter being built this week. It started yesterday. So after a very muddy, long winter, we're finally going to have a shelter over us as well. So it's really changed. It's changed from kind of myself going out in the van, seeing young people, holding appointments outside, and then going back to 2021, 22, when I left the NHS. The reason for that was we secured our first council contract to work with families on waiting lists. And at the same time, we received a donation from someone we'd never met before, from a company who wanted to support mental health organisations. And the combination of the two meant I could go, right, I can go and leave the NHS, I can kind of run this full time and take on some team members as well. So we took on a part-time occupational therapist and peer support workers as well, who can use their lived experience to support young people. And it's kind of grown from there. There's now 12 of us in the team, which is huge.
Yeah, huge team. So you mentioned doing the den building in the woodland. What other sort of activities are you offering to the young people in the woodland space?
Yeah, so in the woodland space, we provide we have 3 different groups a week, and they're age based. So we have 7 to 10-year-old group, 11 to 14, and then a 14 plus group. And sometimes we have an 18 plus group as well. So it can range from, it's very much led by what the young people's interests are. We have some structure in terms of tasks that we need to get done in the wood. That might be collecting sticks for lighting fires, general maintenance, thinking about if we're doing, they're currently building a pizza garden so that we can cook pizzas with all the ingredients that they're growing. So the young people come up with ideas, and then between the groups, they will do those projects between them, but they'll also learn skills such as safe knife use, axes, fire lighting. I do bushcraft and have gone along to kind of lots of bushcraft conferences and training. So so that I can do the activity and task analysis on the activities that we're doing, so we can adapt it for the young people. Cooking plays a big role in our sessions, and that will range from s'mores and marshmallows up to baking birthday cakes for the young people on their birthdays there, mac and cheese, pasta from scratch in the woods. So cooking is a big element of what we do there.
Amazing.
We have, because of the range of ages in our groups, sometimes the things that, and abilities, sometimes the things that people have as ideas, their group doesn't quite have the skill, ability or development to create that. So we have, even though the groups never meet each other, we have a way that they can communicate. So if they want a notice board building, we can put that down as an idea, and one of the other groups will go, yep, we'll do that. And then they can communicate between them so that they can say, yep, we found a bird's nest. Can someone build a barrier around it so no one goes near it? And then the other group will do it and say, we've done that. Is that to how you wanted it? And they'll communicate through us to each other, which is a really nice way of them kind of keeping in contact.
Great skill to build in itself, isn't it? And are there specific goals? Sorry, go on.
That's good. Your internet just jumped a bit.
Are there specific goals that the young people are working towards?
Yeah, so our therapy sessions work in blocks of 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. At the start, we will receive the referral. We'll learn a little bit about the young person, either meet them with their parents, or they'll come and have a look around at the woodlands beforehand if they want to. Sometimes going to a new group is really anxiety provoking, so have a look around. And at that point, we'll have a chat with them about what they want to get from the group. The majority of the young people are either struggling to be in school or are not currently full-time in school, or they've experienced a life event that's impacting kind of their mental health and how they interact in day-to-day lives. So a lot of the goals we get are around just being around other young people. And they're actually normally okay around adults, but it's that social interaction, the unpredictability of young relationships, being able to voice opinions and speak up and kind of have their ideas heard, is often a big goal. In school, sometimes that's really tricky to kind of put your hand up or kind of contribute to a project when you've got a really good idea. So bringing those kind of social confidence skills out. Some young people, it might be around wanting to develop their ability to concentrate and to see projects through. So that kind of temporal sequencing and kind of that looking at how they carry out tasks. And that is often if we have young people who've got ADHD or who are autistic, and it's giving them that confidence and that just right challenge to go, you can achieve this, and opening up their amazing minds that can just envision all these projects, but sometimes putting it into action is that really tricky step. So enabling them to look at how they can put that into practice is often a goal we get. And then expressing emotions, or we get that as a goal, but actually most of the time we strip that back to understanding that emotion and what interoception is, and we do a lot of interoceptive work in the woodlands.
And with the goal setting, is that something that's getting regularly discussed with the young person to show their progress? And is that something that you then use to, when you're applying for funding as well, to justify your service?
Yeah, so we kind of set the goal at the beginning of the 6 weeks, and as we're going along, we kind of we verbalize, oh, that might be towards that, or how is that going, and at the end of the 6 weeks we do videos with the young people, where they either are on camera or they're filming something in the woods and they're talking about what they've got from it, where their goals are and what they want to do next if they're going to come back for another 6 weeks. So they can come back for another block if that looks like they need to work on that for their goal. And some people do 1 block, some people may do 6 blocks. It's quite open to make sure that they can have a really good transition out of the service as well. And the feedback we get in those videos, with their consent, we can use for our funders as well, to kind of show and demonstrate impact. And that's far better than us just writing something out as a report that doesn't really have their voices heard, because they're the most important people to get heard.
And much more accessible and more emotive as well, to show the real impact that it's had on people's lives. I mean, it seems like a service that's filling such a gap that isn't being provided by the NHS services. And I was going to ask what the current thresholds are with the NHS for young people. What thresholds do they need to meet to be eligible for NHS mental health services at the moment?
I mean, in theory, a lot of the young people we work with should meet need for NHS services, but I think just the sheer number of young people who need support and the staffing capacity within services, often it's now not around thresholds, it's around just capacity and waiting times. Some young people, I mean, at some points it's been 2-3 years to get assessment, and then up to 5 years for kind of a therapy of some sort. So it's such a long process, and even though they may go, you're not unwell enough for a tier 2 service at the moment, if you're waiting for that long, actually you're going to get to that point where you are more unwell, or you're struggling more with your mental health, so then you're into crisis. So where we're trying to position ourselves is, if we can work with people at a really early stage before they need NHS services, that free NHS services up to work with people who need that kind of multidisciplinary whole team around the young person and family. So rather than kind of being competitive with the NHS, which would be ridiculous, there's so many young people around who need that really early kind of support. Say early support, it's not, because a lot of young people are really struggling and they do need the NHS support, but it's such a long wait list at the moment, especially in Norfolk. And the allied health profession kind of representation within mental health services, so occupational therapy, speech and language, physio, dietetics, it's really low represented in Norfolk in particular. I think in Norfolk, mental health services have around 7% of the workforce as allied health professionals, and in the country it's around 14% in other mental health, so it's around half representation you'd normally get in mental health services. So you might get 6 sessions of CBT, but if you're doing kind of daily activities based person, that's not going to kind of need.
And am I right that Couple of Tea due to this can work with some schools?
So we've done work in schools. We were working in the 7 Breckland high schools, and we've worked there for about 18 months.
Okay.
So we're just finishing up that project, and that was funded through the Breckland Youth Advisory Board. So young people who are going, this is what we've noticed that other young people need in schools, and they've been a fantastic support of going, actually, we like the way that you're doing it. Come along and do some school drop-ins. And that just helps us open up to see what are young people saying, where can we signpost them to, but also we've then got free group occupational therapy and other free groups that they can attend.
And that was offered to any young people in the schools that were interested, or yeah?
Yeah, it was open drop-in lunchtime sessions. Though it ranged from 5 turning up to 100 turning up, it would be really varied. The team would have different themes each week. So
That's hard
things
to
from
plan for, isn't it? Between when you don't know whether you're getting 5 or 100.
Yeah, absolutely. So our team's made up of occupational therapists and youth workers. So they're a really dynamic bunch, and youth work and occupational therapy fits really nicely together. It's that kind of what's going on in your life, nothing's off limits. Let's have a think about what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen on your website that you're starting a therapeutic photography workshop as well.
Yeah, so this is a group that I ran when I was in the perinatal mental health team during COVID. So the last time I ran it was online. So it's going to be really nice to do it in person. And it's a way of exploring emotions and identity through photography. So you work through kind of having a look at six big emotions and going around the woods, or we've got one in Norwich, so kind of urban environments, finding something, some texture that might represent that emotion. And you work through these different kind of tasks, and the last couple of sessions is documenting a day in the life. So you get 6 photos, I think it's 6 to 8 photos that you take that will represent what a typical day in your life would look like. And then we're holding an exhibition of that at the end of it to kind of look at how people can explore emotions in really abstract ways and not having to verbalize things.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really powerful tool for someone that can't think of the words or doesn't feel comfortable expressing things verbally. And it can help
absolutely.
you to understand your own emotions as well, can't it, through thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah, and giving that kind of external object, so the photo that you've taken, you start describing, if it's a picture of something that's fluffy or warm in color, or it's spiky, or it's glutinagulous. So, it's really good words you get from describing it, and then think about how that sits in your body and kind of tap that in with that interoceptive work again.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had worked in mental health research as one of your previous jobs. Was there any particular research you'd come across or you used as to try and get funding before you started to say this can work, this can help young people?
Yeah, I mean, research is it's a really interesting arena to work in. I think especially having done a psychology degree where there's a whole plethora of research and it's so huge, to coming into occupational therapy where there's a lot less research and very different styles of research. So I think it was helpful working in the research department and having when I did my psychology undergraduate, I did a couple of paid research jobs during the summer as well as an intern. So research has always been really important to me. I think working in research took blinkers off a little bit about how research is set up and put forward, and who runs research and some of the big names out there and the trends in research and actually how they come about and how that then informs things like NICE guidelines. I find really interesting because it's often, if you know someone who's got a big name in research, it'll get published. Whereas if you haven't and it's an idea that you want to explore and it's not quite in the trends, then that's harder to get through. And I think that then really impacts OT and particularly getting research out there, because we do things in a slightly different way in occupational therapy rather than randomized control trials. But for me, the research is really, it has to underpin what we do. That's what makes us healthcare professionals and registered healthcare professionals. So but look, it kind of opened my eyes to make sure I look at research that isn't just occupational therapy research, but it involves other bodies. So especially post-COVID, public health put a lot of research around nature and recovery post-COVID. There were a few papers at the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. And Natural England in 2016, when I was first looking into kind of setting up and how to incorporate things, did a whole kind of green paper on nature-based interventions for mental health. And then there's the OT research, and there's lots come through from America. America seems to have embedded nature into their occupational therapy practice a lot easier than what we have in the UK. But there was Nature and Outdoors Scoping Review for Contemporary Occupational Therapy in 2023 is a paper that came out. That's a really, really nice paper. And then the Institute of Outdoor Learning, even though it's not OT specific, looks at outdoor mental health interventions and what is doing well-being in the outdoors versus what is therapy in the outdoors, or what is adventure therapy. So it looks at actually what are all those different components. And for me, that's important because I see a lot of people who want to work outdoors or in nature in their therapy practice, but they feel they have to be a nature therapist to do that. And actually, we are therapists, we're occupational therapists, we know what we're doing. Just happen to be doing it outside. You don't necessarily need a whole big training add-on to do it. And I think this is where people find that their confidence dips a bit when thinking about going into this. We're OTs, we analyze everything. Okay, you might need specific things. So I went and did my bushcraft competency training so that I could do task analysis of the activities. But if I was supporting a young person who wanted to be a mechanic, I'm not going to go do a mechanics course. Or if someone wanted to go and, I don't know, learn how to sew, I don't have to go and be a sewing tutor. So I think people get in their heads the expert in what you're delivering, but you're not a teacher, you're alongside someone. As long as you understand the concepts, the risk assessment, the health and safety side, and how to do things well, then that's enough for occupational therapy to do things in those environments.
Yeah. I feel like you're also gathering a lot of your own data through the goals that you're setting and measuring with your young people, and all the qualitative data you're getting from them through the videos, for example. And in a sense, you're doing your own research, really, aren't you? Is there any way you can sort of find the time or the funding to publish, the findings from Caputo?
I would love to at some point. Yeah, it would be really good to kind of really succinctly analyze what we're doing, and perhaps that's an avenue I'll go down. I don't know, I have to do my masters. I don't know whether I can face doing anything more, but I'm in a really nice peer group of other occupational therapists who are interested in nature and bushcraft and outdoors, and we're at the moment, we've met a couple of times online, and we're looking at actually how can we gather what evidence base is around at the moment, but how can we build one together. So we're looking at different options. Yeah, I would love to get some things published about what we're doing here. We use the VDT Booker, so the Von du Toit's model of creative ability, and the creative outcome measure for how we measure and plan our interventions. So something around that and how we gather evidence would be a nice way forward. But to contribute to the mental health research would be good.
Yes. Takes time and money, doesn't it, to do these things?
It does take time and money. I'm about to start a level 5 apprenticeship in management and leadership, so maybe I'll get that done and consider it.
Yes, one thing at a time. So practically wise, I mean, it's obviously amazing. You call it a social enterprise?
Yeah, it's social enterprise.
Sort of thing. I feel like a lot of OTs would love the idea of doing something like that, but actually doing it takes a lot of work, a lot of planning. You have to learn a lot of things. But practically, how does it run? So, for instance, how do you get your funding?
So funding comes from, so as a social enterprise, you get grants, you get donations through fundraising, but you also want to have an element that's trading. So unlike a charity where you want to kind of, you're mainly relying on grants and fundraising, you want to be able to bring your own money in as well as a social enterprise. So we have some contracts with councils. We provide training, which we charge for. So any profit that we make on training, we then invest into the therapy side of the organisation so that we can then continue offering free therapy and interventions. So training, we do lots of fundraising, we do stalls and events. We've got merch, so we've got kind of our campfire community, which is our woodland program. We've got jumpers and mugs and all of those things that we sell online, but primarily it comes through contracts, grants and training at the moment. But yeah, our training arm is what we're developing more of so that we can become less reliant on grants in the long term, because it's so competitive that a few big ones, you can't guarantee you're going to get them year on year. So we
Mm.
need to build up our trading arm and using our expertise as a team to kind of go, let's share that. If we can empower other people to support young people through our training, that actually meets our goal anyway of making mental health accessible.
Yeah. And how about your referrals? How do you get young people into your services?
Lots of self-referrals, parents, through social media. We've got some really good links with schools now.
Yeah.
Worked in lots of schools, particularly in South Norfolk and Breckland and Broadland.
Mm-hmm.
We work really closely with youth organisations, so young carers groups, youth groups. They often apply for funding so that they can bring us in-house to support their young people. So MTM Youth Services, for example, work with young carers. They received some funding for the Norman Lamb Coalition for Mental Health, and then they paid us to come in and work directly with their young carers to do occupational therapy sessions or EMDR sessions with them. So partnering up is really important so that we can really get to young people who might not necessarily go and look for support, being in schools, and then local councils, social prescribers, connectors, GPs, and the mental health services as well.
And how, so in terms of GPs and other healthcare professionals, is it social media that you'd reach out to them to make them known about Cup of Tea?
Yeah, social media has a big part in it, but there's lots of kind of networking, help hub type meetings. So there's health and social care partnership meetings that I go along to and talk about the services. There's always lots of meetings to go to. Each council has their own kind of health and wellness partnership part of it. So going along to those, sometimes the police crime commissioners run them as well to support vulnerable families. So it's just kind of going to all the different meetings and setups and networks and sharing what we've got on offer.
Lots of networking, getting yourself out there, being confident.
Yeah. Yeah. And that means my role has changed a lot from kind of delivery and working with the young people to now doing that more of the management CEO post.
Yeah.
Still going into the woods 2 days a week at the minute, but I imagine that will probably go down again, but I will keep my hand in it a little bit.
Sounds good. And how did you learn all of this? Because it's a whole new set of skills, isn't it, setting this up? You mentioned that you're about to do a management course, but did you do a particular course before you started it?
Yeah, I ummed and ahed over what I wanted Cup of Tea to be. I mean, it didn't have a name at that point, but what I wanted a thing to look like. I asked families, and interesting at that time, they said that they didn't want to go to a charity. So a charity wasn't really on my radar as setting up. Plus, it's a huge process to set up a charity. And then I saw a 6-week social enterprise course just to learn what it is and how you do it. So I did that. In the October 2017 and then December 2017, I registered the organisation and I applied to School for Social Entrepreneurs and Unlimited. So they're all both based in London, but they do courses across the UK. And they do a startup course with a pot of money as well. So Unlimited was a year of mentoring, and I think it was £1,000 or £600. And School for Social Entrepreneurs was again a year of mentoring and courses. So you go 1 day a week, 1 day a month for a year, and you got £1,000 as well, so that you could kind of test out ideas and things like that. So they were the first kind of entrance points into learning what capacity you want to run this in. And those courses, you don't have to have set anything up. You just have an idea that you want to float and test out. So they're really nice, safe ways of doing it. And then they mentor you into legal structures and how insurance and all the policies and procedures you need, and then also funding that you need to continue as well. There's lots and lots of support out there.
And did you meet a lot of other people at that time that were also starting their own social enterprises?
Yeah, you're in a cohort at the time, so you get to kind of meet and travel that journey with other people. So there's an amazing organisation in Norfolk called Miniature Donkeys for Wellbeing. So Sarah, who runs that, was on the same course, 6-week course that I was, and I met my other director, Helen, on that course, and she became a director for when we set up. And then my other director was the daughter of someone else I met on one of the courses as well. So it's a really nice network, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, that sounds really important, because if you're going into a whole new skill set, a whole new role, to have that peer support of other people that are on that journey with you.
of going, oh, what are we doing? And all those
Yes.
doubts and points of going, why have I done this?
So the next question, you must have many of these, but what would you say is your proudest achievement with Cup of Tea?
I think probably this year is that we've got this office. So because it had been myself and my two directors, and then we'd got this project and we'd hired another occupational therapist part-time and a peer support worker. We all worked remotely, and it wasn't until January this year that we've now got an office space where everyone can all get together. And I think having something really tangible, and the team the team we've got is incredible, and they're so passionate, and they'll come together, and we have a team brew each month and a quarterly meeting where we go, right, what have we done the last 6 months? Where are we going next 6 months? And everyone's really involved and enthusiastic, and just be able to have a space to do that. And for me, being able to take a step back and go, okay, I can go on holiday now after 6 years. I can, and it's going to run and it's going to be fine. And I took myself to Japan in September and went for 21 days, and I could just go. And I think that to get to the point where it's a healthy point, and not that I'm going to step away, but it's not reliant on me, and it's going to have a bit of legacy at some point when I do want to step away, or I want to retire at some point, that it's not going to be reliant on me forever is I think is a healthy point and a bit of an achievement.
Yeah, you've got to look after yourself. You need to have your own time off as well.
Yeah.
And what would you say you've learned about yourself, so both personally but also professionally through doing the social enterprise?
I think I learned my brain works really, really quickly. And I had a late diagnosis of ADHD last year, which I kind of had a bit of an idea about, but I didn't know. And I think actually that has been a really interesting learning, and that being in NHS services has been really structured. And I struggled in those because of how structured, and sometimes the loopholes you have to go through seem really arbitrary for my brain that's going everywhere. But then when you're on your own or you're creating those structures, that's terrifying. So I learned that actually I need some structure, but not too much. And that trying to put things into words and systems in place that other people can understand is a real skill. And I've taken on, we've got a virtual admin assistant and in-house admin who are wonderful. So I've learned that I'm rubbish at replying to emails. I'm not very good at sending invoices and remembering things like that. So I don't have to do them. I've got other people and we can work as a team. And I think for me, learning that I don't have to do everything has been that biggest learning curve. And even though I might be able to do it, it might take me 3 hours, whereas I can get someone else to do it who likes doing that. And it'll take them an hour to do. So yeah, learning to work alongside other people in a way that feels really proactive has been difficult, but been really good learning experience.
And that's really good advice, I think, for anyone that's thinking of starting up any sort of business or service or social enterprise, because you could be quite like you wanting ownership of everything, couldn't you? But we can't be experts in everything, so you have to try and delegate tasks, so you'll just never ever have a rest.
Yeah, so some things I'm like, accountancy, I'm getting an accountant straight away, let's hand that over. Money is not my favorite area, so, and understanding it I don't enjoy, so they can do that. However, coding the website and doing social media graphics, I really enjoy. So I haven't handed as much of that over, but we've just got a social media volunteer who is doing some of that, but still the coding, I still like to teach myself and do those.
Did you know beforehand that you'd like that, or is that something you discovered recently?
No, just discovered, yeah. I like going, how do I do that? And having a quick Google and go, yeah, no, that's fine, I can do that.
That's interesting, because if you'd stayed in a statutory services OT job, you'd probably never have had the opportunity to even like to find out that you enjoy doing that.
Yeah, not at all. I think getting to kind of try lots of different things and dip in and dip out and go yes or no. And if it's a no, there's someone out there who can help you. So even down to there's a thing called Norfolk Pro Help. And if you're stuck on something, you can request and they'll find, I don't know, a lawyer or someone to look over stuff that you need for free, and they'll offer that out as a non-profit organization. So you can just team up with people, and that builds your networks and support systems as well.
Amazing.